This is Sally Knyvette, and you're watching Blake 7, The Way Back.
Why don't you face it?
Because I don't know what to do about it. I mean, if it is the limiter, I don't know how we can help him. Unless neurosurgery is one of your particular talents.
Unfortunately, no.
Suppose Zen gave us the necessary information and detailed instructions.
Oh, come on, Blake. This is not something you do by numbers, not even highly sophisticated ones. This is an area that has remained the exclusive province of specialists.
Yes, I know.
There are quicker ways that you could kill him, but there are none more certain.
Hello and welcome back to Blake 7, The Way Back. I'm Todd.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dwayne.
I'm Philip.
And I'm Richard.
This week we're looking at Series A, Episode 10, Breakdown. When one crew member's bad headache leads to a series of escalating events, which take a deadly turn for some. But hey, everything is okay, so long as we get a happy ending. Well, welcome, Richard, to our podcast. This is your first time with us, so give us a little bit of background with your history with Blake 7.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me on. Blake 7, well, I'm now, sadly perhaps, old enough to remember when it was first screened here in Australia in 1979. And I've really, I guess, been watching ever since. So that was both times it was shown on the ABC, the original compilation tapes, the original VHSs, then onto cable television, then onto the DVDs, and now, of course, we're at the Blu-rays. So coming up well over 40 years, and I'm still watching and still discovering new things.
I, of course, know you as a Doctor Who fan, but did you discover Blake 7 because of Doctor Who?
It would have been because of Doctor Who, because my memory is I really sort of became a Doctor Who fan when it moved to weeknights, probably in that sort of halcyon period immediately post Star Wars. My memory is they actually gave it Blake 7 a fair bit of advertising, I think, before it started is it seemed like a lot of advertising anyway. And look, the TV in our house was pretty much welded to the ABC. So look, I was there, on the first night, but as I said, I do remember it being advertised, and look, it was another sci-fi show. So having been absolutely blown away by Star Wars and then just, absolutely just gorging on anything else I could find, Battlestar, Buck Rogers, Who, anything else, Blake 7 was sort of a natural progression, but it is one of the ones that sort of stayed with me all the way along.
Well, it sounds like you're going to give Philip a run for his money tonight with facts and figures and details about the show, so we'll see how that goes down. Tell us a bit about this episode, Philip.
So, Breakdown by Terry Nation. Producer Dave Maloney. Director Vere Lorrimer for his third appearance after Cygnus Alpha and Seek, Locate, Destroy. Script editor Chris Boucher. The designer for the only time for this ever for Blake 7 is Peter Brakacki, who you may know because he designed the TARDIS console room. So that's what he's most famous for. And I think he's once said he's very much like a TARDIS console room, but we'll talk about that later. Costume designs by Rupert Jarvis. Music by Dudley Simpson. First screened in the UK Monday the 16th of March at 7:15. First screened in Australia with little Richard watching on Friday the 25th of May 1979 at 8:20. What was his parents letting him stay up so late for? Commissioned on the 21st of April 1977, and filming took place between the 23rd and 25th of January 1978, with the studio recording on the 10th and 11th of February 1978. The audience was 8.8 million, which is a bit of a drop from 2 weeks ago. Appreciation score 68, bit of a drop, and chart position 41, also a bit of a drop but still doing really well for a TV show. And those are the facts.
Thank you, Philip. Dwayne, how was this episode sort of advertised in words in the UK?
All right. For breakdown, the implant in Gan's brain was designed to limit aggressive impulses, but when it malfunctions, he is in urgent need of neurosurgery. But will the doctors at Space Research Station XK72 aid a wanted criminal?
Well, we're about to find out, aren't we? We'd like to give our initial thoughts, and I thought I'd just go around the room and see what we overall thought of this particular episode. I will start with you, Philip. What is your overall feeling?
I was actually pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this. My memory of it wasn't that good. It was actually quite weak. I was surprised by how good it was. There are certainly some weak moments, but on the whole, I really enjoyed it.
Well, it was, as Philip said, it was certainly better than I remembered it being. I don't think it's without it's not without its flaws, and I think the last third particularly probably is a bit weak. But yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised.
I had very high expectations for this one because it's one that I hadn't watched very often, and I thought, great, I knew it was about Gan. We're going to get a Gan story. Finally, I was disappointed. So rather than, plus with the last few episodes being of such high quality, I was going in a little bit higher in my expectations, and unfortunately, they weren't met. And I think it was a very, very poor story, lifted mainly by a couple of stellar performances, and that's what made it extra enjoyable for me.
I thought it was very mid. I think there was 3 sort of distinct sections to it, and things are sort of being mushed together with stories. I mean, you could have cut out the middle bit and still sort of expanded the other end of the episode. I didn't dislike it. I watched it with the new special effects, which I think may have helped that middle section. So yeah, so I'm interested to sort of delve into all of that. Well, Chris is a newbie here, and not long ago he watched this episode for the first time, so let's go and hear his thoughts on his initial watching.
Chris, you're about to watch the next Blake 7 episode breakdown. What are you expecting?
Well, I did read the blurb for this one on the
Shame on you. What are you doing?
On the booklet I did, so I do know that this is going to be one that I have wanting to find out about, and it's about Gan's chip breaking down. I just had the book open and I just read it. I just wanted to know.
Have you read any more? Are you spoiling
No.
yourself?
I haven't looked. I haven't read anything on the website or anything like that. That's the only bit I've read, so I don't know anything else. I'm glad because we haven't had much of him, and yeah, there are a lot of characters. I understand that it's going to be hard to get a background on each character, but I'm looking forward to this one and finding out more about this chip.
Okay, so what are you expecting?
Well, breakdown. Obviously, there's going to be the chip in his head's going to break down, and I guess stop doing what it's stopping him from doing. So I think that was anger. I think he had it put in because of his anger issues, but I'm not
really clear. We will find out more this episode.
Yeah. I can't. I just in my back of my head, I thought they said something about anger and something. So in an earlier episode, so I think it's along those lines, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, you go watch breakdown, and we'll talk after you've watched it.
Great. Looking forward to it. Talk to you later. Bye.
So, Chris, you've just watched breakdown. What's your first reaction?
I didn't mind it, but I came away a bit disappointed with it. I was expecting to find out more about Gan and his background, and it's just left me with more questions. Like, I've got more questions about him, especially about his chip. The chip I found quite confusing, the breakdown part of the chip, because I'm like, has the chip broken down and revealed his real personality? Or has the chip broken down and caused him to turn into a psycho? I don't know which one is which, so it's just left me with more questions.
As much as it was technically the Gan episode, he really wasn't in very much.
No, he wasn't. You didn't learn a lot about him. So Julian Glover's character, I thought, I could see him as a recurring villain. I could see him coming back like Travis. Yeah, I could, like he does. I could see him coming back. I don't know if anyone else was served that well in the episode. I liked it. I liked it. I didn't think it was a bad episode, but just not my favorite so far.
Okay, well, that's what Chris thought of at the time. Chris, what do you think of this episode now?
Well, I wasn't looking forward to rewatching it because I originally had thought it was going to be like about Gan, but I watched it with the new special effects and I actually quite enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to do. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that and again, the special effects did help me in this one.
Let's get in and examine the different aspects of this episode. Of course, it starts on the flight deck of the Liberator with Gan having a very bad headache and ultimately throwing Jenna in a way that I think if anybody was ever thrown, they'd actually be really badly injured. And everything starts from there. So what are our thoughts here at the beginning of the episode and what's going down with Gan on the flight deck?
It's an interesting way to start in terms of Gan on the flight deck, which is good to see. He was actually being useful. But the fact he has no lines before he suddenly starts contorting his face in all kinds of pain, I don't think the acting was dreadful. It was probably a bit too 1970s acting. I think we'd be a bit more, maybe slightly more subtle now. I do think the way he reacted to Jenna was pretty shocking in terms of it was so violent. I assumed, actually, it was interesting because I went backwards and forwards and watched it a few times just because I assumed it was a dummy he was throwing. But looking it up, it's actually a stunt person. So there was actually a real woman he threw like that, which is pretty over the top. And there's some pretty, it's a big throw he does with her.
Hey, he's obviously got...
Jenna.
And then there was just the dragging with one leg. Like, what's he actually going to do? So it's a bit freaky just in terms of what's going on. And I guess, we discussed Gan's character and what the limit is actually doing. Because actually, are we seeing what Gan's really like in those moments? And if so, it's pretty terrifying. But it also could be really good to use that later, which they never did.
It doesn't serve Gan very well because, as Philip said, he doesn't have any lines, and you really are at the point. The crew have sort of shown him obviously how to do some basic stuff on the ship, but they really don't expect him to be able to handle anything without Jenna sort of watching over his shoulder. And she's initially, obviously, she just sort of pushes him aside and runs into the controls. This episode really doesn't serve Gan very well, and unfortunately it sort of starts as it means to continue.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because she really puts him down. I mean, all this episode is going to be all the crew putting their lives at risk to save Gan, because obviously they're so close to him. And yet the way that they talk about him and the way she treats him is really with contempt. And you're too stupid to handle this. You should have called us. Was basically her attitude.
Very much so.
So you kind of wonder why were they bothering to all put themselves at risk for this person who they obviously don't think much of.
We shouldn't be too surprised at the violence against women because we've seen it a couple of times throughout the series so far. And I think in Mission to Destiny, there was a big punch.
You better get her out of here. I really rather enjoyed that.
Of Avon against a woman, which we commented on at the time. I mean, this is the kind of thing that the female actors wanted. They wanted a bit more action, so good stuff.
I know I'm jumping ahead, but he's going to attack Callie at some point as well. And I know, yes, he will go and attack Avon, but the fact that
he takes the computer more than he attacks Avon.
Yes, that's true. But what I'm saying is that what shocked me most was that both of them are alone with him, right, at various points, and they both get attacked. And doesn't serve his character at all. And I mean, I guess the other thing is he has so few lines, and when he does have lines in this episode, he's been very manipulative. But again, I'm jumping ahead. We've got to obviously get all the crew come running, and we get him off the flight deck into the surgical unit, which again appears to be on film. Yes, am I right?
Yeah, that was all filmed on film. Yeah, 2 weeks earlier.
It was a bit of a bait and switch, the opening of this episode, because we didn't have the slow meandering into the meat of the episode. It kind of went straight into the reason we were there very, very quickly. And then I found it meandered later for me personally. So those initial scenes got me in. And Sylvester McCoy, I'm sure, got lessons on doing the old sideways gurning for the telly movie, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Dwayne. Like you're hooked by what's going on, and they get him into that surgical unit. It's a very interesting surgical unit, very space age, or what we think a surgical unit's going to be like. I had to smile at those security arches that were holding him in place. Reminded me of something from, Doctor Who. I think.
Robots of Death. That got
Yes,
Maybe
it was
Sunmakers?
and the Sunmakers was the one I was thinking of, with Leela being restrained.
It's a bit like Dark Master Plan too, with a chair that holds you in place. That the Brett Varn was put in. I can't move in this chair. It was the same sort of technology.
There's a trope for you.
But it's interesting watching his hand acting, in that. Of course, when is it Jenna doing the examination with that ridiculous pink lollipop thing, or is that just me?
In terms of technology, that was far beyond the day. In 1978, I don't think they had ultrasound machines. They certainly wouldn't have had anything wireless. And so you've got a handheld wireless device which is actually doing an internal examination. I actually think it's not a bad idea of what the future holds. Maybe the color choice may not have been the best, but in terms of what it did, and there's actually a lot of technology. I think I mentioned before, because the designer for this episode, and the only one who did for Blake Seven, is Peter Brackley, who did the TARDIS console. And I was thinking the whole room was set up very much the same way as the TARDIS console room, with the plinth in the middle, the camera having to work around the sides. It was a very similar design. And just by the way, this would be his last ever show for the BBC. So he'd been tenured with them for 20 years. Blake Seven was the last show he went out on after 20 years of service in the BBC.
Yes, well, I know that I was making a bit of a fun of it, but you're totally right. I do agree with the fact that it's all thinking ahead about what could be, and we're looking at it with a 2020s lens rather than the 1970s lens, and looking to the future. So I do think you're right. I think it's one of those things where Terry or Chris is really thinking about what's scientifically available now, and what could be in the future. So I actually think it does a really good job of that. But of course, it then gives us the opportunity for the rest of the crew to have a discussion about what are we going to do with Gan, and how are we going to solve this problem. I think it's ironic that the episode is about Gan's implant, but it's not. He has very little to do throughout most of the episode. It's what's happening with the rest of the crew on the Liberator and the consequences around that.
Yeah, I think he has less lines than in any other script.
He didn't even get to serve any water.
So how do we feel about all the discussions where they're going to actually take Gan for surgery?
Oh, when they're talking about, that how long it's going to take to travel everywhere. Look, it shows obviously that space travel takes time. So I guess from a space concept point of view, it does slow the episode down a bit. It probably does solve the question of, are there aliens in the Blake Seven universe? I mean, we've obviously got Callie, but there are clearly others. There's the race that has said they don't like humanoids, and Homo sapiens in particular. So, but yes, the episode kind of stops. You've had all this really, and some of the character interaction really, when they're talking about what's wrong with Gan, is really quite good, because you sort of get the idea Blake is really flustered. He doesn't know what to do. Avon obviously uses this as a point scoring exercise, but and you see Blake's he is angry because he's truly frustrated because he's not in control of the situation. But I did sort of balk at the bit where he suddenly decided, well, maybe they could just try brain surgery. Zen gave them the instructions.
Well, they can all fly his alien spaceship perfectly, and work teleports, and what's a bit of brain surgery? How much do you think Richard Gareth's performance may be based on what he was going through physically at the time?
Yes, well, of course, this is the episode, and it was during the camera rehearsal, I think, when they were doing the fight on the flight deck. He broke a bone in his foot, or injured his foot. Now, there's sort of he was told by the director and producer, whatever, look, you need to get to hospital, you need to get that checked out, because he was in quite a bit of pain. But of course, there's just sort of this underlying acknowledgement that if they do that, that's the end of the filming for tonight. And they're so far behind at this point. This was recorded in the studio, I think it's only a couple of days before Mission to Destiny screens. So they're only about 3 weeks ahead. And this sort of latter part of season 1, they are really up against the clock by this point. I mean, you sort of get and I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit in terms of episodes, but you do sort of get that idea that season 1 is sort of a limp to the finish line. Yes, but Gareth Thomas elected to stay. Just moving it back to the story, Gareth Thomas did elect to stay, and Vere Lorrimer afterwards wrote a letter to the Stage magazine, which was the actors' newspaper, basically saying what a trooper Gareth was.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, I mean, he really was the lead of the show and leading by the front. And I do think all those, because all the Federation, so all the Liberator deck scenes were all filmed with him with a broken foot. And I do think as you look at him, you can kind of see the fact that I think maybe slightly affecting his acting, and he's probably a bit crankier than he needs to be. And because the other that's affecting him too is during the week, the whole cast had been told that Blake said was so successful that it's been renewed for a second season, and therefore the BBC was taking up all their options, and they all had another year of work. Which for most actors they'd be going, fantastic, we've got another year of work. For Gareth and for Sally, they both were devastated because they both wanted to leave the show. Gareth had been told by many of his RSC friends that the show was beneath him, and he should, go back to real acting and go back to the Royal Shakespeare Company. And I think he'd actually been offered a role but couldn't take it up because of the show. Sally was just fed up with where the character was going and wanted to go and study for a few years. And so where Paul Darrow and Jan and Michael Keating were all excited to have more work, for Sally and Gareth they weren't happy, but they had no choice because of their contracts. And I think that you start to see a bit of that. I think certainly actually in season B with Gareth Thomas, you really do see him being quite cranky. He's only there for contractual reasons, which of course is really tragic when you think he's the lead of a show and the show's named after his character, and he's never going to have anything like it again. This is the biggest he'll ever get for his career, and he's not happy about it. But there you go.
It's always interesting to hear these behind the scenes things. Was Dave Jackson, was he offered another contract or did...
So he's tracked to contract take ups too, so he should have had another 12 months of work. So no doubt to discuss in the future, no spoilers, how different reactions that may happen to him for the second season. It's also interesting at this time. This is when Terry Nation is actually looking at all the characters, and because he's decided it is too many, they want to get rid of one of them somewhere during the second season. And the two he's thinking about is Vil and Callie. And you look at an episode like this, and admittedly, I don't think they're using Callie particularly well in this episode, and why she suddenly becomes a nurse is beyond me. But very much she will become the ethical centre of the crew, and you start to see that ethical centre appearing in this episode. So they're going to progress on that. Michael Keating's performance is faultless. The way he handles himself, the way he gets the looks that he gives, the way he sneaks off with the gun, the way he defends people. I can't imagine why you'd think about getting rid of Michael Keating at this point, because to me, his performance is just exceptional.
Data for an accurate projection. Within the parameters you have described, the surgeon's skill and operating procedures are unknown variables.
There you are. Thought not.
I think it was a case, though, wasn't it? I think Terry Nation, it wasn't how he saw Villa, the character, I think. He saw it as something completely different, and that Michael Keating wasn't interpreting the character the right way, I think, or how Terry thought it should be interpreted.
I think you're right. I mean, it's interesting that, Terry wrote all the episodes of the first season, and he doesn't keep his characters consistent at all. So in the very first episode, your Villa is quite conniving and double-crossing, and you can't trust him. By seeing as Alpha, though, he's suddenly a wimp and a coward and hiding behind Gan, and then you'll see him do brave things, and he really isn't drawn the same way. Callie's the same, and Jenna, they were both designed to be these strong, powerful women, and then you could see they just couldn't quite work out how to write for them, and I think Sally's doing a lot better than she thinks she does. You talk to Sally, and she thinks she's doing a really bad job. Well, not that she's doing a bad job, but she's not being served well as a character. I disagree with that. I do that to her, because I think she was actually served a lot better than she thinks she was. But I do see why she was a bit frustrated.
Whether that's sort of a function, I think certainly across season 1, and I sort of talked about how they're limping really to the finish line. You probably are also at the point, the scripts are now coming in majorly underrunning. This one underran quite a bit. Next week's one is even worse when you get to Bounty. Chris Boucher and indeed the directors are sort of having to pad
and
write extra lines of dialogue and things to try and keep it, get it to the 50 minutes. So, because he wrote, Terry Nation wound up writing, I think it was 15 scripts, I think, because there were 2 rejected ones, including actually the one this replaced.
So what should this have been?
So this slot was originally a script, I believe it was called The Invaders. It was going to be a GAN episode. The ship flies through sort of a particle cloud or something, and there is an alien in there that wants to take over the Liberator. GAN, because of his limiter, is the only one that can see it. So the culmination of the episode is GAN. It was going to be a split screen thing, with GAN effectively fighting himself as GAN fights off the invader. Now, of course, split screen shots are technically difficult to do. So that got vetoed quite quickly. And I believe this script came in as the replacement. David Jackson was still very keen that they should keep the GAN fighting himself idea. So effectively, GAN is fighting Berserker GAN for control of the limiter or control of GAN's brain. But again, it's far too technical and too time consuming for the amount of time they've got to get this in the can.
They could have done a 3 Doctors kind of thing where John Pertwee wrestles Omega in that sort of bizarre. I mean, they could have carried out something like that, which may have worked. And in terms of all being inside David Jackson's head, I do think it's disappointing that this is really the GAN episode.
And he spends it all either like running around, sort of clutching his head, or lying flat in his back. I probably, and this might be a discussion point for later. I actually, when we did this one for Spacefall, we were sort of the opinion this is really probably the moment where the series turns its back on GAN. I think as a character, but again, we're probably getting a bit spoilery. So
it's interesting that you say that, and it's also interesting, Philip, you're talking about the different inconsistency of the characters, because I think the actors bring a consistency to it, and I certainly think with Callie and Jenna and Villa, you can see at times those inconsistencies, but because of the way they play it and what they bring to it, I think it's less obvious, at times when it could be more so if you just took it for what's actually there written on the page. Getting back to this episode, we go through a lot of interesting sort of names of places they can visit, lovely Terry tropes, but then Zen decides to have his hissy fit and break down to
Zen, set navigation computers for direct route to Space Laboratory XK-72, speed standard by 6.
Rejected.
You cannot reject a direct command.
Justify that rejection, please.
Your command reduces to an order to self-destruct. This runs counter to Prime Directive.
Zen obviously believes there's something nasty in that zone.
It has no data. It is acting upon an instruction, an order not to enter the zone.
Then we'll go on manual. Jenna?
Ready. Compute course and let's get started.
It's sort of like suddenly we're turning from looking at GAN to suddenly why is Zen doing this and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting in the fact that there's suddenly this part of this prohibited space that he's not telling them anything about. Like, I just think it's weird. Like, wouldn't you say, like, there's a black hole or whatever, we're not going in, or he doesn't have the information? I mean, how do you guys feel about heading into this section where they're all Avon and they're all discussing about, what they're going to do and how they're going to get through this to save GAN?
You notice Avon is he really doesn't appreciate Zen answering back. you are to do what you're told. But so I think he clearly initially he's obviously worked out that Zen doesn't actually know what's there. The parameters are if you don't know, don't go. So he's initially, I think, fairly keen to do it. And as I said, I suspect part of it is he doesn't appreciate Zen answering back. Once he has worked out what Zen shutting down on them means, he is immediately, look, this is too dangerous. We need to turn back. And he goes to the point he sort of grabs Jenna and, Blake has to shout at him really to make him let her go.
Yeah, he's actually quite violent towards Jenna again. It was a bit over the top too, that reaction, I would have thought.
I thought his reaction was sort of genuine because he knows if they do go through it, they're going to die. So I kind of thought someone would probably run over and grab the person who's controlling the ship into that dangerous zone and try and shake them and stop them to do it. So I kind of thought that was pretty realistic.
The thing that was confusing me about that sequence was Wasn't it something like 600 hours if they went around the thing, and then it reduced to 300 hours? It's that space distance thing that we've talked about in other things. I think we were talking about for Dalek's master plan too, Todd, weren't we, recently? Similar kind of things that Terry does with space and distances and things like that, and times. That was capturing my attention more than the other things that were going on. But I just wanted to mention, in terms of leadership, because Blake seemed to step back a lot. What I was noticing in this was Avon was very much coming to the fore and coming into his own much more. I've noticed little glimpses of it all through season 1, but I was noticing that that core trio of Callie, Villa, and Avon was starting to form. I'm a little bit spoiled knowing what's to come. No spoilers for Chris, but I'm seeing that core starting to form here, particularly with Avon, and I really enjoyed his performance in this episode.
Zen says it talks about his prime directive is to not commit suicide. So that's his main purpose, is to survive. And ironically, the very act he's doing is going to lead to his destruction. It is Terry Nation is more than happy to make characters do things for the sake of his plot. So I think one of the things about Terry's writing is it's always well plotted and well structured. And I do think, even though people are saying they don't like the second section quite so much, the structure of this episode is very clear. 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes there. Clear structure, delineated by clear sections, but in terms of and clear plotting. But what he doesn't like is he doesn't like characters or dialogue, and they're not his fortes. And so he'll make characters do whatever he wants them to do for the sake of his plot. So he doesn't care what the characters are like. He'll just he needs Callie to be a nurse. Callie becomes the nurse. He needs so he makes the characters do what he needs them to do, because what matters to him is the plot. And thank goodness he's got Chris Boucher there for dialogue, because that's really what helps the show sing so well. So I think the two together work really well, which is why the first season is so successful. But you can see that there are issues there.
I did get a sense of episode 6 of the Daleks, The Ordeal, where there's endless scenes of them jumping over a chasm in a cave just to kind of pass the time. And I felt that a lot of the scenes in this story were just there to pass the time.
Look, there's a lot of intercutting between them being on the bridge and discussing this, and then, the ship keeps speeding up, and then we've got back to Callie being the nurse, and Gan saying, help me, will you, Callie? I'd like to sit up. I found that really creepy, the way he delivered it. Like, I didn't believe that it was actually him. Not that we've had a lot of the character, well, we've had the character, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't spent a lot of time with that character for a while. And so having Callie fooled by that undermines her character a bit. And then, of course, he goes to strangle her, and then he has to run off, encounter Avon, and then, we're back to the black hole and everything's, we get, we're running down the corridors. We're trying to get tension and everything into this section by this intercutting and what's going on.
It actually looks like both women would have died had something not happened. Blake not arrived to save Jenna. He would have killed her. Had the ship not suddenly lurched sideways and thrown Callie out of his hands, she would have died too. It's pretty terrifying in terms of what's going on there.
Oh, I was just going to say, he actually also, on the flight deck during the fight, he actually clearly goes to break Blake's neck.
Yep. Exactly the same way as last week. Blake actually broke a Federation officer's neck in the same way. It was actually almost an exact repeat of the same action, and it looked like he could easily have been killed too. Yeah, right. Huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well. And think about the limiter is Spike in Buffy, and they put a chip into his brain so he can't kill anymore. Every time he goes to bite someone, he has huge pain, which is a very similar idea, which I do wonder whether they stole from this idea.
I also thought something about Buffy as well. If you think that Gan, the inhibitor in Gan, is suppressing his natural feelings, so he's really an evil guy, then he's Angel. Because Angel got his soul back, was nice, and then it lost his soul, became evil again. So he's Angel. So I wondered if that was where they got Angel from as well.
My notes actually say, wouldn't it have been amazing if they'd actually let Gan go evil for a couple of episodes? Because he could have, they could have really done something really wonderful with that. Because what they do with Angel for half a season in Buffy is brilliant in terms of making someone that you love and is kind and gentle and all those things suddenly become so terrifying and so evil. They had the potential to do the same thing with Gan, but once again, opportunity lost.
Well, with the reboot, maybe, if anyone's listening.
The fact that Gan is so awful, right, and violent towards the members of the crew. This is one of the things that irks me at the end of this episode, where it just cuts to everybody just laughing.
How do you feel? I feel as if someone's been poking around inside my head with their foot.
We had to kick your brain a couple of times to get it started.
Only twice. They didn't remove the limiter.
It was not possible.
They've modified it, though. Your ears glow in the dark now.
Hey, let me know when you're ready for work.
Thanks.
Oh, by the way, welcome back.
There's no apology, right? But I'm sorry, like in terms of dialogue and that sort of thing, in other shows where they do that happy ending after something awful, people at least apologize. Here it's just everything's fine, right? And we've just had an event where a whole space station has been exploded as well.
Battle computers project pursuit ships directly in Liberator's flight path.
Down 01. Maintain heading and speed standard by 8.
Plasma bolt launched.
Activate the force wall.
Activated. Missed! It missed us, but it's still running. Say goodbye to one bolt hole.
It's not funny, Aiden.
It wasn't meant to be.
And that really irked me. It really irked me at the end of the episode. I just thought it was completely out of place, right? Which is why it lost some points for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's, and look, we maybe will have the sort of a more detailed discussion about what the limiter might or might not do, but even if you accept the idea that it's the limiter that's caused all the problems and Gan isn't an evil sex killer, really, they've just had a really quite frightening first-hand view of how strong and how brutal and he is. And yet, yeah, they're all just sort of laughing about it. He's tried to kill 3 of them. And it's all just happy families again. That was a really, really poor ending.
Yeah, it struck me too. I found it quite odd. Just reminded me of every episode of Murder, She Wrote at the end of Murder, She Wrote with Jessica Fletcher laughing her head back and pausing. I thought I hated that then, and I hated it in this one too.
Oh, Chris, that's so wonderful, you know. This poor family's grieving and she's, you know, her presence has caused the murders.
We all know she did them, yeah.
I love it. Well, let's jump back to the middle of this episode. Blake has decided to, let's go straight to the center of this vortex with maximum power. And I just love Avon saying,
Blake, in the unlikely event that we survive this,
Yes.
I'm finished. Staying with you requires a degree of stupidity of which I no longer feel capable.
my God, that man gets the best line.
But Blake then gets the comeback.
No, you're just being modest.
She doesn't always, does he? You know?
I agree. He does get the best lines. There was a lot not to enjoy for me in this episode, but Avon's lines was not one of them. It sort of lifted it for me every time he was on screen.
Oh, especially when he said...
But the problem there is that they're considered potentially hostile.
To the Federation?
To the species. They don't like humanoids in general, and in particular Homo sapiens.
That puts their intelligence beyond doubt.
I thought that was pretty clever.
Yes, those small touches really do help lift things. Obviously, at this point in the episode, we get to, of course, see Jenna's wonderful piloting skills. Just to remind you that, you know, she's a pilot. The visual effects with the shaky mirror and all of that. I love that.
That Miralon filming again.
It's such a 70s thing.
I watched the new effects, which I thought they were really good. Were the mirror effects in the new special effects?
They were
still being used. Yeah,
they were. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Yeah. I kept thinking the Ice War was appearing, going to shoot people down, but
Close the doors! We gotta keep... Don't move, anybody! Don't do anything! Harvey, don't!
I was just watching that sequence thinking to myself, I am so glad I'm watching this new updated special effects version. I probably would have been complaining about the original.
I can't say the classic ones aren't that bad. They've actually put a lot of time and money into the classic effects this time. I'll put some comparisons on about here.
I enjoyed the new special effects with this. I just thought they worked really well with the spaceship. Richard, do you prefer the new or the old special effects, or you appreciate both?
I probably appreciate both. I have to say, look, I am a bit of a sucker for the practical effects. So a lot of the model stuff that they replaced, some of that was really disappointing. Probably that, and it's all the way back in Spacefall, probably that first hero shot you get of the Liberator when the scans on the London come back up, which was that beautiful model in the original, is now sadly a CGI effect. Look, it's a very nice CGI effect. I am a bit of a stickler for the models, but I actually think on the whole, the special effects on these aren't really all that obtrusive in a lot of cases. I actually think they're, look, they're not sort of Warriors of the Deep Merca where it really improves the story, but on the whole, they're actually not that intrusive.
Okay, we're now 30 minutes into the episode, right? We had 15 minutes of Gan and surgery, 15 minutes of, forbidden space and what's happening there. And finally we arrive at XK72 and we meet some new characters.
The only new characters.
What are our thoughts on these characters coming in and another sort of change of tack for the story?
Gareth Thomas's friends were saying that Blake Seven was beneath him. I think that's doubly so for probably Julian Glover. But Julian Glover brought such a refreshing style to this. He just ate up every line. You couldn't take your eyes off him. He was incredible. It was a very short performance, but it was just brilliant, as he always is in everything that he guests in.
He really elevated. I actually thought the last third, particularly the probably three sort of not particularly well-drawn characters we meet on the space station, was probably, for me, the weakest part of the episode. But I thought he was great. He well and truly lifted the stuff he was given to do.
Can I say he's always compelling on screen, but I really feel like he's the Brian Brown of evil acting, in which Brian, being an Australian actor, always gives the same performance. And I just go, well, this is Count Scarleone. This is his character in The Last Crusade. But of course, they're yet to come. But I just thought it's the same kind of performance where he starts off being seen to be quite reasonable, and then slowly his true motives are revealed, and then he turns out to be quite not reasonable at all. A great performance. And it's the first one of those, but I've seen it all before in the wrong order, perhaps, is what I'm
King
trying
Richard
to say.
was good, though. It was quite different. Not a villain in that.
Well, he's not a villain, you see. So
Yeah.
I'm just concentrating on the fact that it's a villainous performance. I guess with his arrival and our other two characters,
He's Cain, which I think is interesting because it's a biblical take on Cain who killed Abel. So the first murder in the Bible was Cain, spelled differently because it's spelled Kayn rather than Kain, but it's the same name. And then there was Farron, which I think he really wanted to use Taran, but he's already used that several times. Poor Terry, he can't help himself. Poor Terry Nation. So can't use Taran, so he went for Farron because that's so different. And Renor is the third one.
Reynolds the guy that turns up and is instantly attracted to Jenna. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
I do like her. I like her line there where she insults him to his face and he just takes it.
Hello?
Hello.
Ah, Jenna, this is Professor Kane's assistant. His name is...
Reno. And I had a feeling this was going to be a good day.
Yes, well, don't let your feelings run away with you.
Oh, a sense of humor, too. I love girls with a sense of humor.
Yes, I can see where that would be an advantage. This way, please.
Do you believe in love at first sight, Jenna?
Not yet.
I'm not sure he gets it though. I think he's such a medical nerd. He totally misses the fact.
No, he doesn't get it at all. No.
Well, before we discuss all of their shenanigans that are going down, they are the three guest actors for this episode. So we have a segment we call Who's on Who.
Okay, yes. Richard, every episode we take a punt on how many of the guest actors have also appeared in Doctor Who. So I go around the table and get a number first. So out of the three guest cast, how many of those do you think have appeared in Doctor Who?
Well, out of the three main guest cast, I'm going to go with two. There is actually a
That's
third.
That's yours?
Yep.
Okay. Philip,
I was going to say 1 1/4.
1 1/4?
I'll explain the quarter in a minute.
Chris?
I was going to say 2. Yeah.
2? Okay. And Todd, what do you think?
Well, I didn't look it up, so I was thinking 2, but then I thought maybe it's 3. I've been so wrong other times. I'm just going to go with 3, just because they seem so familiar to me.
Okay. All right. So the actual number, and of course, Richard being the Blake 7 information guy, it is actually 2. Of course, we know it's Julian Glover, who was King Richard in The Crusade in 1965, and he was in City of Death, of course, as Count Scarleone and Scaroth. And so the other actor is Ian Thompson, who plays Farron, like the guy who was managing the space station. He was in 2 Doctor Who episodes from the 60s. I reckon, Richard, you're going to know which ones they are. So I'm going to see if the other guys might be able to take a guess.
No, I've got no idea.
No? Okay.
Yeah, early.
His first appearance was in the Web Planet.
Oh no! Was he a Zabi?
I don't know, not a Zabi.
Oh, Menoptera.
A bit younger. He plays the leader of the Optera. You know those guys at the end,
the subterranean ones.
Oh my god!
Okay, I recognise him straight away.
Yeah. Anyway,
and that's it.
Yeah. And
no, he's in another one.
He was in The Chase.
Yep.
So there was lots of guest actors in The Chase, but he was in the early part of The Chase. He played an Iridian. So he was one of the guys in makeup there. So he's played 2 different aliens in Doctor Who. Who's the quarter?
A quarter? I'm saying a quarter because the person doing all the voiceovers, so the computer readout for Gan's condition and the voiceovers was actually Michael Gaunt, who's the brother of William Gaunt, who played Orsini in Revelation of the Daleks.
Oh, that's obscure. I like it.
We're not paying that.
No, I will also say, because we did this for Spacefall, the stunt lady that Gan throws when they're having the fight on the flight deck is a lady.
Don't tell me it was Stuart Fell.
No, it's a lady called Sue Crosslet, and she was also in Doctor Who again as a stunt performer.
Okay, well,
which
name
episode?
Some stunts.
Destiny of the Daleks. And she's Romana's stunt double. No, she's actually Romana's stunt double in that.
Oh, okay.
When she slides down the chute into the Dalek City, and she's in something else as well. Yes. she's in another one.
Those other two actors must have been in other BBC productions, because I just swear to God I thought I knew that they were like in Doctor Who. Their faces were so familiar, but now he was a Menoptera and an Iridian. I would never have guessed
Not a
that.
Menoptera, not quite as
No.
advanced as that.
An
He was an
Optera.
Optera.
So let's discuss what's happening on the space station and with all the surgery and that sort of thing. I really like the commander of the station. And although Julian Glover's character initially seems quite reluctant and is very much into himself, I kind of recall the first time watching, I didn't necessarily pick that he was going to have called the Federation until perhaps he starts to stall.
He was very arrogant towards Farron at the start when they, he sort of was very dismissive and said, "Oh, I'm just going to go, I'll go over with them to the Liberator." So I kind of got a whiff that he was going to be, well, like you said as well, you kind of know what his character is in City of Death, and it was the kind of the same thing. So I kind of knew he was going to be bad. I really liked the scenes where they were actually doing the operation with the music and the silence and everything. I thought that was quite effective and sort of carried it across really well.
I thought the dynamic between the two of them, the commander and the Julian Glover character, Kane, I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was fascinating. It's just a shame that there was so little time to develop anything. I wanted to know more about them. If only Big Finish could work out how to get Kane back and do a spin-off so we could get more from the life of Kane.
Julian Glover always brings a lot to any role. And I do think you watched him deteriorate. As a surgeon, that sort of arrogance is sort of what you kind of expect from surgeons. But the fact that he was prepared to let someone die for the cause was beyond what most doctors hopefully do, because the whole point about being a doctor is do no harm. Like Chris mentioned, I think the surgery was really good. Once again, I think doing pinhole surgery would, I think, be something that wouldn't have been happening in the world at that stage. And I do think that the props they use, where you can actually see that looked like the spikes were going into Gan's head, was another. There's some really excellent props in here. As much as some of them a bit daft, there was the pink lollipop. The different props they kept trying to use and develop, I thought was actually one of the better shows for trying to show space in that way. And I do think the commander of the ship was very more politician than he was a commander. And I think that worked well in terms of his conversations with Avon. But you can actually see quite early on that he really wouldn't settle, I don't think, on this base. But once he knew his crew was in danger, his first priority was actually to get back and rescue them. So even though Avon is often drawn as a bit of a negative, nasty character, he gave away his bolt hole to save Gan. He allowed the ship to be in danger a bit until he really thought he would die when he wanted to turn round. But once he was on the space station, he was prepared to once again sacrifice his bolt hole for the sake of saving the crew. So you keep seeing actually Avon is a far more complex character than he likes to portray himself as.
He clearly, yes, I sort of took it. He clearly feels the need to warn the crew. I suspect he's probably being a little more cynical. He's probably also worked out that if he stays, Farron would really have a hold over him. He would sort of be beholden to Farron, because there's always a thing once Farron had got what he wanted in terms of the technology, and they'd got the teleport and whatever else Avon gave them, there's always the chance that he would just turn him over anyway, which I think for Avon would be totally unacceptable. That another character like that would really have a hold on him. So he's arguably worked that out. So he sort of does the nice line, "Oh, I need to go back to the ship and collect a few things." Yeah, I sort of got the thing he's worked out that it wasn't going to work.
See, I like the fact that we're exploring this side of Avon, and then you get to see him come back, and also at the same time you've got one of Terry's things where time is passing with this operation, and Jenna and Kelly and Villa are discussing the length of that.
Kane is supposed to be a genius.
The trouble with a genius is you're never too sure what he's up to. Perhaps Zen can tell us how long the operation would normally take.
And I quite like all that, and I like the fact that Kane has suddenly, contacted the nearest Federation base. Like, it's something that I guess I'm used to in Blake 7, is that when you have an episode that doesn't seem to have the Federation, then some way it gets worked in and suddenly it appears. Like, that's what I just expect the Federation to turn up. All of that I quite liked towards the end of the episode, right in these last few minutes. I just felt that it helped it elevate it more. If they'd just simply gone, we need to get Gan somewhere, and they just got to a Federation base without having to go through all that space stuff, then maybe they could have expanded on all those characters and all of that sort of dynamics.
The other thing, in terms of plot-wise, I thought was really clever was when Avon comes back, Blake once again establishes a relationship with him, entrusting him by saying, "You know what to do," and walks off the flight deck. So yeah, it's a bit bizarre that there's 3 Federation ships all coming to attack the Liberator. Usually they'd be in let's go red alert and go into battle stations, except 4 of them all go off to see Gan, and Blake just says, "I trust Avon enough to look after it," and just leaves Avon there. So I think that's a nice way of once again saying to Blake to Avon, "Listen, I trust you, and I know you'll do the right thing."
Yeah, I like that. And I also like Blake's line to Kane, like,
How soon can you complete?
35 minutes?
Do it in 20.
Or you'll kill me.
No. In 25 minutes, I'm returning you to your station if you haven't completed your work.
Your threats don't bother me in the least, you know.
I shall destroy your hands. 20 minutes.
You can see that hits home too.
The look that Villa and Avon give each other too, in terms of their realization that actually Blake is more dangerous than they keep realizing.
I would also call out Michael Keating's performance probably in this last third. He's the one who works out clearly that something's maybe not quite right, and that you never know what a genius is up to. And he's the one he distracts Jenna and Callie and goes and gets the gun and the gun belt, and sort of sneaks down into the infirmary. You do get the impression he is actually quite relieved when Avon's suddenly there to back him up when he starts threatening them. But
this is also the episode where we discover that you don't need teleport bracelets to go back. Did you notice that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
When they sent Kane and Renal back to the space station, that was those 2 they sent back, wasn't it? They didn't give them teleport bracelets.
maybe that's why Kane goes ballistic on Farron. Like, he totally goes unhinged.
Get me weaponry.
How dare you? I'm in command of this base.
You have forfeited that command, Farron, you gutless nothing.
Weaponry. Stop that, I tell you. Take no orders.
You struck my hand.
Weaponry.
Yeah, how do you explain that at the end? He's total psychotic break.
Well, is it a bit like Blake threatened to break his hands, and then Farron sort of touched them, and he broke down as if, like, you know, he was going to get. Maybe that had something to do with it.
His hands were important to him the whole way through, because while he's waiting, he's doing a manicure, he's checking his cuticles, and doing all those little things to make sure your hands are all good and healthy. But the fact he bludgeons someone to death
with a phone,
it's really horrific.
Vere Lorrimer might have a hand fetish, because we've already had Gan going like this, and then we get Kane going like this, looking at his hands later. So yeah, he might have a thing for hands.
He doesn't have any hands now because, you know, the Federation turn up and battle with the pursuit ships, and I'm sorry, like a stray missile, and they're all like exploded.
Yeah, I can say that is really horrific, and I think I mentioned before. Part of the thing about Travis is Travis really does believe he's the hero and Blake's the villain, and things like this keep happening where Blake does blow up entire bases full of people and full of and this is an entire base of scientists who none of them are Federation. They're not involved. They're just scientists developing weaponry and medical practices. Who knows how many hundreds are dead, plus their families, and not a single thought about it. And once again, no wonder the Federation can actually say what a terrorist and evil person Blake is.
But Blake, they didn't shoot it though, did they? I thought it was the Federation. I thought it was a bolt from the Federation that had missed the ship.
Bounced off the shield.
Oh, it bounced off it. I thought it missed that.
It's friendly fire. If it had hit the shield properly, the shield would have absorbed it. But it ricocheted off the shield into the station.
They still had a good old chuckle about everything afterwards, though.
One moment afterwards, let's just be laughing our heads off. I mean, we have a segment like "What Happens Next," but you know, there's a Federation news thing saying whole base destroyed with hundreds of families. You know, Blake is a villain. You know, this is what happens next. You know, when we cut to them just having a good old chuckle about everything that's gone down. Oh, I just, I tried to murder you. We almost got exploded in a black hole, and and now all these people are dead.
And as much as Kane's dead, he was evil. He just killed someone, blood someone to death. The other character's back on the base too, and he was quite nice. A bit of a womanizer, bit of a nerd, but I mean he's dead too. Let alone everyone else. It's pretty bleak.
This is one thing I am I'm not really a fan of reboots, but if they can get this together and really explore the characters a lot more than they did in the like television back in the 70s and 80s never explored characters too deeply anyway. But if they can do that, like the character of Gan had so much potential. There's so much potential for interesting backstory to explore slowly over time, which they never did. It was the same with Jenna as well. You know, it's just little snippets of backstory that they could have explored so much more. And I hope that's what Jason and his crew do with the reboot.
I agree with you. Like, I mean, I think if they're going to reboot the thing and have the same characters and that they've got the opportunity to look at these flaws, like in season one, if they're still going to follow the same path into season two and give the opportunity for Gan in particular to be explored more and taken down paths to build up that character. So if they do decide to take him to the ultimate conclusion of where he goes, then it means so much more. Like one of the interesting things, and I'm off topic here, is the fact that Callie has been using her telepathy quite a lot more in season one and than I ever expected, because I'm just used to series 2, 3, and 4 or whatever happens. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Dwayne, on that.
Man, her telepathy would have been useful here. I mean, a couple of times she could actually use her telepathy to help, I'm in danger, or look out, he's behind you.
Well, she could have got a sense of what Gan was really feeling and trying to trick her. You know, she could have sensed that. But
yeah, or try to calm him down. Gan, it's okay. Just relax. Yeah, there's all sorts of things.
Philip, it's Terry's plotting and characterization, you know.
Once again, it's hard to believe he wrote all these stories and wrote these characters, and he forgets things like this character's telepathy. How did he not remember what he's done? And he keeps creating these wonderful characters and then never uses them again. You go, oh. And then he has to do all this padding because he's got no content. You know, he wouldn't need to do the padding if he actually used what he had better. But anyhow, how can I compare to Paul Terry's amazing first-class writer who's made millions? So I should just shut up.
Let's talk about the character who was central to everything happening here, who, as you said, didn't get a lot of dialogue, and that's Gan, portrayed by David Jackson. And I believe, Chris, you may have some things to tell us a bit about David.
I do. So today we're going to shine a light on one of the quiet pillars of Blake 7, David Jackson, the English actor who brought depth, warmth, and surprising vulnerability to the role of Olgun Gan. Jackson was born in Liverpool in 1934, and like so many of his generation of British character actors, he came up through the classical route, training at LAMDA. I had to look that up, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, mastering the stage and building a career on craft rather than celebrity. Before science fiction fans ever knew his name, he was already a familiar face across British television, Z-Cars, The Saint, The Avengers, The Sweeney, Space 1999, the full tour of iconic 60s and 70s TV. But it was Blake 7 that gave him his defining role. As Gan, Jackson played the gentle giant of the Liberator crew, a man physically powerful but emotionally wounded, carrying the weight of a limiter implemented in his brain. He brought a grounded humanity to a show full of rebels, rogues, and idealists. Even when the scripts didn't give him much, Jackson gave Gang dignity, humour, and heart. Outside the Liberator, he continued to work steadily. Films like 10 Rillington Place, Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, and The Big Sleep. Sitcoms like Wyatt's Watchdog, and later the return to the world of genre audio with Big Finish's Sarah Jane Smith comeback. What many fans never knew is that Jackson was also a passionate man of the theatre, especially Victorian theatre, even creating a one-man show exploring its history. He performed at the Old Vic, the Royal Court, the RSC and the West End, always returning to the stage that shaped him. David Jackson passed away in 2005 at the age of 71, but his legacy lives on in the affection of Blake 7 fans. Gan may not have been the loudest voice on Liberator, but thanks to Jackson, he was often its conscience.
He does a competent job as Gan, but I guess it's just the way the character's written and what he's had to do so far. He's the one I'm far least interested in at this point in the season.
Yeah, I don't think it's David Jackson's fault in any way. It's the writing of the character. I don't know. When you pointed out a minute ago, Chris, comeback, like he really did a great performance in that audio drama. And if he was with the Old Vic and the RSC, he probably crossed paths with Stephen Greif, and it's not his fault. It's the writing.
No. Again, when he's given something to do, he's actually really good. and he can be quite an effective character. I think, unfortunately, they've sort of worked out quite quickly that 6 is too many, and it becomes worse next season. Yeah, and unfortunately, I guess like any ensemble cast, there's always sort of going to be one or maybe two characters that probably aren't developed fully. And sadly, I think in Blake 7, it's Gan. And I think this really is the episode where, as I said, the series really turns its back on him, I think, after this. They've sort of, given him the episode. He really has nothing to do in it other than stumble around and lie flat on a bed and pull faces.
Yeah, I think in Spacefall and Cygnus Alpha, you do see potential for Gan, but they quickly do take it away. And I think part is Paul Darrow's fault. I think Paul Darrow just caught the screen so much, and Chris Boucher liked him and started writing for him, and the show really becomes about Blake and Avon. And then secondary to that is the other characters. So I think Sally Knyvette felt it because she's supposed to be the second lead, but she felt the fact that no, she wasn't the second lead. Paul Darrow very rapidly became the second lead, and even by this stage, you can feel him becoming the lead. That it's Avon's story you want to follow more than Blake. Avon's got more character, more depth, more humour, and poor Blake starts to suffer more and more, I think, especially in the second season.
I think Paul Darrow works out very, very quickly. He's got the best character, and just goes for it. And unfortunately, the writers sort of follow suit.
But at this stage, he's very subtle about it, because his acting is subtle. The way he responds to Blake is subtle. He's not going to stay that subtle for the rest of his Blake 7 career, and he's certainly not going to be that subtle when he goes to Doctor Who.
And Richard, I'm looking forward to seeing the episodes coming up, which I'm only one episode ahead at the moment, just to observe what is going on with Gan, just through the next run of episodes, just to really see if what you're saying is true, because, we had glimpses of him in episodes, but moving forward, is it a case of less and less?
Isn't it ironic, though, that Gan probably has the least to do of all the characters? We probably talk about him more than all the others, though, because of how little he gets to do.
Because of that.
So he's finding his fame in a different way now.
It is interesting because, if you think about how much we talked about Villa or Callie in this episode compared to Gan, but again, I guess it is his episode, so he needs something, doesn't he?
And look, I guess the ideas here about Gan are quite interesting, but they're just not fleshed out, and they're sort of half-assed, really, most of them.
So, are there any Terry tropes that stand out in this episode to people that we haven't really discussed? I mean, for me, it's just all those different space names for the planets and the timings of trying to get here, there, and everywhere in space.
Padding was the biggest thing for me that stood out. Just that
padding.
Space
padding.
Space travel, and just.
Well, I guess similar to Paddy is the idea that he likes to have areas of hidden danger that people have to cross. And so, maybe it's partly Paddy, but so in the Daleks, you had a couple of episodes where they're crossing through the waste. I forget what they call that land, but Ian and Barbara have to go through those wastelands. He likes swirling things too, because there's that swirling monster in there too, and we'll have more swirling and water particle things later in Blake 7. Also, in terms of crossing unknown dangers, you've got the Daleks, you've got Genesis Daleks, you've got the wasteland, and you've also got the seashells, the clams, the giant clams. Once again, into an area where you don't know what's going to happen next. Farron is a space name. He just loves his, surprised there's not a Tarrant in his well. The other thing too, of course, is obviously Terry Nation, and the fact that Vere Lorrimer is the director, was no woman in the guest cast. Had it been Pennant Roberts or Michael E. Bryant directing, I think one of those people in the station would have changed gender. Rather than just having 3 males as the guest cast. Vere Lorrimer doesn't bother to do that sort of thing, but Pennant Roberts usually does change. If they're all males, he does change 1 or 2, and Michael E. Bryant does the same thing. So it would have been good had maybe, there's no reason why the director couldn't have been female. I guess in terms of chatting up Jenna, the other 2 needed to be male. But I just think it's a shame that, we've got a whole space station, all of men.
Like this podcast. Now,
Any female fans that they want to, any female fans that they want to come on, let me know because I'd love to get some female fans to join us.
I guess as a final point, but there is probably just continuing and more talk about Gan, is maybe what the episode perhaps suggests about him and who the real Gan is. There is potentially a couple of points maybe during the episode, do we feel perhaps where we meet the real Gan? Maybe when he's in the infirmary with Callie?
When he's trying to get out of the...
Because if you notice in that, it's not the sort of blind, sort of berserker rage he's been in for a lot of the rest of the episode. It's quite calculating. He pretends to be unconscious a couple of times. He's clearly just sort of watching her out of the corner of his eye to see what she's doing and when perhaps she might be vulnerable. He knows who she is. It's not a sort of a, delusion or anything. He knows exactly who he's talking to. And it's really, quite creepy. He sort of talks her into, very gently just talks her into removing the restraints.
What's been happening? I'd like to sit up. Help me, will you, Callie? Please.
And then as soon as her back's turned, he pounces on her. And that sort of really quite nasty smile he gives her basically as he's throttling her. Yes. I mean, you see other things, just to go on for a second. His rage actually changes. If you notice, Callie, he wants to strangle. Jenna, he's sort of almost, dragging off to his cave, basically, when he attacks her. Yet the attacks on Blake and Avon are more just that blind rage. He sort of just grabs Blake, throws him around a bit, and then goes to break his neck. He's clearly intending, sort of to club Avon to death, I think, with the thing he rips off the wall. But with the women in both cases, he's it's not rage really. It's something more calculating.
Do you think that's scripted or do you think that's director?
I don't know, because it's interesting that the sort of ongoing point is I always sort of felt there might be something perhaps in the back of Terry Nation's mind about what he wanted to do with Gan. Because if you take the point perhaps that it's the limiter that's doing everything and is just scrambling his brain, and you sort of want to reset Gan in a way, surely Kane could have just either removed the limiter or sort of, taken the space batteries out of it, make him a more effective character, but they don't. So I was sort of always being left with that idea that maybe there was something else perhaps that they were intending to do with Gan that never quite happened.
So Terry Nation, some of the other stories, like the Survivors in particular, really wrote very black, very evil characters who are sexually perverse often, or there's a lot of these other shows, not Doctor Who so much, and certainly not Blake 7, really do go for the perverse. And one does wonder whether that is partly what he was thinking with Gan.
Because, I mean, if you sort of want to go further, and look, I know other commentators have made this, there are those sort of hints, in Duel, when he sees Cinefar, suddenly his limiter starts hurting, and he's much the same in Project Avalon. He's sitting there on the flight deck with what he thinks is the real Avalon, and he's there, and then suddenly his head starts hurting. So, I mean, you can sort of read, and that's maybe reading a little too far.
Well, it's hard to say, because there's also with Cinefar with Duel where he asked Blake what was she like, and he claims to have only seen the old one, but he'd actually seen the young Cinefar on the planet. So it's either it could be a mistake made in the script, or once again, if you read it in terms of the character, why is he lying to Blake about not seeing Cinefar when he has seen her?
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, there are definitely ideas that are so interesting. If they could use those in the reboot, I think that would be fascinating to explore that a bit further. Great ideas.
We know that Jason watches this, so Jason, if you want some people to come and help script, some doing scripting, we're happy to come and help you.
You make it more than what it is in the original, and what you just said, Richard, in terms of how he's looking at Callie in those scenes and the way in which he's reacting and calculating is something that I observed too, but didn't really put it into words. Like, so there's a little bit more going on here than perhaps I initially thought.
Is it worth us mentioning Vere Lorrimer in terms of director? We're often a little bit critical of some of his filming style, how he sets up shots, and certainly you do see some of his setup shots, like throwing Jenna, which is one shot being dragged out, next shot on shoulder throw. So he does do some of his action scenes like that, which is one of the things he's weak with. But I do want to commend his handheld camera fight with Blake, because that whole shot was actually done with a handheld camera following the action, which is not something that I don't think I've seen Vere do before. It's something very Michael E. Bryant. And it's interesting that while doing that, you get a couple of flashes outside the set, only briefly, but you use a bit of studio lighting up with a high shot, and you actually see the side of the set at one point. You can just see a camera tripod. You got to go on pause, mind you. Yeah, you would have seen it, but you would have noticed the first one run through. But on the pause button, you can actually notice a bit of a camera tripod as they sort of misses. But the scene is so much more exciting because it's all filmed with a handheld camera and following the action in and out.
I thought he did a good job generally. He's not one of your favourites, is he? I can't remember, Philip.
No, it's not particularly one of my favourites. But that being said, Sally had a few things to say about Vere, so let's just see what Sally has to say about him.
Yes.
Can I ask about Vere Lorrimer as a director?
Dear Vere. Dear Vere. He was a sweet, sweet man, but it was a certain level of sort of... he could never remember our names. It was Sally and Jan, and he used to call us Jelly and Jam because he would get us, and he could get our names mixed up all the time. And they said, well, anyway, my heroines, my lovely heroines, Jelly, Jally, Sally, it was always sort of slightly bonkers. And he had a very nice chap called Geoffrey Manton, who was his side PA, and he would say, and now our heroines are going to run down the corridor, as it were, and turn left, as it were, and go bang, bang, as it were. And it was always slightly chaotic. And I didn't realise what he meant. I mean, I think it was in Project Avalon, actually. I had to run down a lot of corridors and I thought bang, bang meant I had to go down the corridor and say bang, bang. I didn't realise that sound effects would be put on afterwards. I mean, I was so naive and so young. I had no idea that, and as Geoffrey had said, run down the corridor and go bang, bang. That's what I did. And of course, everybody fell about laughing, and I felt a complete idiot because I'd said bang, bang instead of just shooting silently. But that's the sort of thing that happens when you don't know an awful lot about working on television. Vere was very sweet. I remember doing, I think it was the one about the moon discs, and I remember him sitting at a desk in the middle of a sort of sandy plain when it was raining and bits of script were flying off in every direction, and he was just, he was a sweet man, but there was a sort of level of it all being slightly mad. But that's only my recollection. And I don't want to in any way, say he wasn't a good director, because I think he was. But that's my vague memory of him. So put whatever you like on that.
That's good. We have a very long critique about his direction and what he does.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, on the episode, because it just, because I mean, we're talking about all the different directors in terms of their styles and what they're good and not so good at.
Yes, Pennant was a very nice man. But I go back to this thing of the directors, apart from Dougie, were largely concerned with their shots, the blocking, where you were standing, what camera angles they would be using. And we'd never talked. I mean, we never talked about the characters and the psychology of the characters. We were just left to our own devices, and it would have been very nice to have had some, a bit more of this Sally or a bit less of this. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think there was time for it, or perhaps it just wasn't the way they directed in those days.
We've had.
I remember on Emmerdale when I was doing some very complicated scenes where I was crying a lot, and one of the directors said to me, "Oh, Sally, when the boom gets to that angle, just start crying, would you?" And I said, "No, I won't," because I was much more experienced then. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "If you want me to cry at that moment, give me 5 minutes to get into the psychological, emotional memory so that I will be able to cry at that moment. But you can't just click your fingers and say cry when, the boom is at a certain angle." But the director had no idea.
Yeah.
Good director would have said, "Okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go off and get into the emotional memory. And then as soon as you're ready, give us a sign and then we will let you do the scene." Because, we're not machines actors. We are human beings and we need to be able to have time to get into something. In a play, you build up to the moment, but in television, when you're doing things out of sequence, very often, you simply can't turn it on like a sort of tap. Anyway, I'm digressing, but it was very, very different. Nowadays, filming or working on TV, you do rehearse, record, and that's a totally different ball game. You rehearse a scene, and when you're ready, having done it, we'll record it, and that's lovely. But that never happened in Blake 7.
You actually prefer that as a model, do you, for acting?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, we rehearsed during the week in the studio. Then you'd have the producers coming round and all the makeup and the camera pay, all coming to watch the scenes being run in a couple of hours in television, in the Acton rehearsal rooms. Then there'd be a whole day's gap. Then we'd go to the TV centre. Then you'd have a meal, which is the last thing you need to do before recording. And then you'd have to record between 8 and 10. And so there was no rehearsing. You just have to do it all in a block and remember every little tiny camera move that you had to do. So it's not a good way to work at all. I mean, working when you can rehearse a scene and get it right up to speed and then say, "Okay, ready for a take, let's go." And that's much easier and better for the actor and for the overall result.
Thanks, Sally.
We're up to the point of who is the most valuable player in this episode.
I'm glad I get to go first. Or maybe I'm not, because I've got two. Okay, so the two are Paul Darrow and Julian Glover. And I think for the fact that I enjoyed his performance so much and it was so short, I'm going to have to say Julian Glover for me is the MVP, because he just, he was unmissable. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen when he was on.
I'm actually going to say the enhanced special effects. That really did up it for me on this episode. I watched it both twice. I watched them in a row with the special effects and then without the special effects. And I fell asleep the second time with the non-special effects. So I'm going to go with that one.
Did you wake up going like this?
No.
I think that the entire crew do an amazing job. It's almost a bottle show in terms of to the last 15 minutes. It's just the regulars doing their thing, and I think that they do an amazing job doing their thing. And a particular note, I think Michael Keating actually really starts to stand out a bit more in terms of how he moves things. I do think Julian Glover is amazing when you get to him, but I'm actually going to make it Paul Darrow, because I think Paul at this point is now taking the show from Gareth. And as much as it's named Blake 7, you can see more and more it's not Blake 7, it's actually Avon's 1, where he includes some other people. I just love Paul Darrow's performance. I think his subtlety, and once again, you're starting to see how he's working with Michael Keating. You can really see people like Chris Boucher watching and seeing what's going to come in the future.
I'm going to go with Paul Darrow as well, because every time my gaze wandered and I was getting a little bit, jaded of what was happening, he'd say something, do something, and it'd bring me back into the moment. So it just, throughout, every time Avon was on the screen, I was very much interested.
And I love his bell-bottom pants are amazing.
I very much enjoyed Paul Darrow. I also very much enjoyed Michael Keating. I love Julian Glover because I think he is such a great actor. He is able to do a lot with the limited material he gets. I actually went for David Jackson, and that's partly because I felt sorry for him. But but look, I think given he has nothing to do, as we've said a few times, except run around clutching his head and bang into walls and things and lie on the table, I could see a number of actors would probably do that kind of half-assed, I think. It's very hard to sort of, sit there and think, well, what's my motivation in these scenes? So the fact that he's prepared to sort of throw himself into it and do these really, quite sad things, I think actually is a testament to him. So, yeah, but I also did feel sorry for him because this is the Gan episode and he really gets nothing to do.
Fair enough. Totally understand that. He makes a lot out of doing nothing. All right, our final scores for the episode. Let's go around the room. So, Chris, what's your final score?
I'm going to give it a 7.
I started off at a 4 because Time Squad was my least favourite, and this was making me as irritated as Time Squad until the performances. So 1 for Avon, 1 for Kane. And then after the discussion today, I'm appreciating it more for what Dan could be. What Gan could be. So I'm going to go 6.5.
I'm laughing because my notes here it's a 6-7, right? Which means it's going to fall somewhere in between. That's going to be a 6.5. But the discussions today were really good and pointed out some things in the episode which I liked but sort of dismissed a bit. So I'm going to say that it's standard by standard. So I'm going to go with a 7.
Well, I actually fully agree in terms of I was thinking about putting it as a 6 originally, and then having watched it again and thinking I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would. I know that fan wisdom is it's not a very good story, but I actually think it's a very average watchable story that I'd happily watch again. In fact, I will be watching it several more times. And so I'm going to give it a 7.
And 7 from me as well.
There you go.
Wow.
Pretty much around the room. Well, thank you for joining us, Richard. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me on. So great.
If people want to hear you somewhere else, where could they go and hear you elsewhere, Richard?
Well, yes, I am also part of a Blake 7 podcast called Spacefall, which you can probably find in the usual places. That's myself and another chap called Dave Kitchen. We are getting into the back half of season 3 with ours. It's been a somewhat sporadic release over the journey, but we have recently just released our episode on Rumours of Death for series 3, and we'll be dropping Sarcophagus probably sometime in the next, maybe in the next week or so, depending on when this goes out. Yes, come and look us up. It's a 2-hander, but we're having a lot of fun with it, and hopefully you'll come and join us.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll see you soon for Bounty. So from me, see you soon.
Good night.
Catch you later.
See you later.
Thanks again for having me on.
Thanks for joining us on Blake 7 The Way Back with Todd Bilby, Chris Beer, Dwayne Bunny and Philip Edney, and our special guest today, Richard Nolan from the Spacefall podcast. Special thanks as always to Sally Knyvette for her contributions. Original theme by Joe Kramer, other music by Dudley Simpson. This episode, Breakdown, was released in July 2026. Please like and subscribe, leave a review or comment and send to your friends. Join us next time with episode 11, Bounty, where we will be joined by set designer and Liberator creator Roger Murray Leach. And before that, we have a couple of other specials planned, including looking at the new Blake 7 production diaries from Cult Edge and an interview with Chris Thompson on the new special effects.